This is Your Homecoming with Cam Reddin on 2SSR FM 99.7.
As a resident of Kareela, I know just about as well as anyone down there that the flying foxes have become just about part of the furniture around Kareela and Como and right down to the water over many years now. But the unfortunate reality of that is that these little critters do far more harm than they do good. The good news is that Council has been working on dispersing this colony for some months now, and the persistence is finally starting to show some results. Councillor Tracy Cook from the Council has played a big role in removing the flying foxes, and she's good enough to join me on the line. Councillor, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Cameron, for having me today.
Not a problem. I want to ask you, it seems to be a case of so far so good. Are you happy with the progress that's been made to this point?
We're extremely happy at the council because we have spent equivalent to what Pittwater Council spent on their 1,500 flying foxes, and we had up to 20,000 to disperse.
I guess that's where the problem seems to lie. I mean, when you have 18,000 or 20,000 flying foxes in one area, particularly where there are schools, where there are a young population, a lot of small kids around there, there's a real risk of spreading disease. There's a real risk of swooping and injury and things like that. So you really can't leave these little guys alone, can you?
Well, Cameron, it's not even just the risk of disease. It's the fact that our children and our residents were sitting in between a camp, and we know that the camps are, the bats are living there during the day. They are screeching and breeding and urinating, and the associated odour and noise and fecal droppings is just something that's not good enough to accept for humans to have to be living amongst.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, where we live, we've got these little orange trees that are just out around the back in the neighbour's place, and what you'd find is for months and for years, they would just sort of gravitate there for hours at a time, particularly at night, and they'd screech and they'd squawk and they'd claw at your window and they'd bash into the wall and they'd keep you up for hours.
Well, yes, because we all think about flying foxes and say, yes, we see them flying along in the sky, but when we're talking about a colony, we're talking about that they live there. So that's what these residents and our 120 children were attending school, often with their playground having to be evacuated during the day due to the risk of grey-headed flying foxes occupying their playground and urinating and doing fecal droppings in that area.
I mean, we're all for preservation and particularly protecting these sort of guys, but you cannot just let it keep going like that when they're causing such a hassle. So I suppose it's a great thing that at least progress is being made. How long do you think it will be until we're fox-free?
Well, technically, currently, we are grey-headed flying fox-free at the Kareela site at this current point in time.
Great.
Now, this was a process that formally started in 2012. And as you said before, the grey-headed flying fox are a vulnerable and protected species.
Yeah.
Therefore, our dispersal and our creation of a buffer zone prior to that, it was all totally regulated by the Office of Environment and Heritage. We literally had to take care of the grey-headed flying foxes, do everything other than serve them coffee and cake, really. But we took care of them, and they were moved along with the appropriate measures at a time that's minimal harm to them, their non-breeding season. We got approval in July, and we literally had to start the following week on the 3rd of August.
Right.
Otherwise, we would have had to wait another year. Because
it's right at this sort of time when they start to settle in, isn't it? You've got to get them before, nip it in the bud, really.
Yes, you're not allowed to conduct it during their breeding season.
Right.
So that's part of why I moved a motion at the local government conference just recently, because it's not just about the fact that we have to live amongst the camp.
Yeah.
It's also that when we do need to deal with human health risk and human health concerns, we are guided by the Office of Environment and Heritage that have this particular grey-headed flying fox as a vulnerable and protected species. And I put forward a motion on behalf of our council saying to the state and federal governments, do another proper population count of this species, because currently they're mostly living in urban areas across New South Wales rather than their own natural habitat.
That's right. I want to ask you about the motion you put forward. Was that rather well received at the conference?
It was wholeheartedly supported by the majority of councillors from across the state. So it was passed with great support.
That's what you want, and I suppose the secondary question to that is what sort of information would doing the further census involve? What would you be looking to come out of that for further action to be taken? I mean, what would come of that?
Well, because we know that most bat dispersals, flying fox dispersals, are unsuccessful, usually we can't predetermine where they go.
Yeah.
We can't determine if they're going to come back. We're not allowed to do any light noise, etc., during their breeding season. Although my staff at council have done a brilliant job in maintaining the environment, putting physical and noise and light disturbances in place, and they also did it at the nearby golf course and St Joseph Banks Reserve, because we know that 63% of these grey-headed flying foxes tend to only move 600 metres away from the original camp. But we were so successful that our model of dispersal will probably become the model that the rest of the nation will follow.
Fantastic.
But in answer to your question, why are we asking the governments to count them? Well, when these creatures return, if they return to our beautiful Sutherland Shire, we want to be able to say to the Office of Environment and Heritage, do we have to put in place all of these rigorous caring and nurturing procedures when we need to move them on from an urban location? Are they still a protected and vulnerable species?
So it becomes about sort of reassessing, and it's a continual process, I guess, as you sort of mentioned to there. It's not sort of the thing where you can get rid of them once and just assume they won't keep coming back. If they do keep coming back, we just have to be prepared for that, I suppose, and then put these sort of strategies in place. Correct,
because the cost of our previous Mayor, Mayor Kerr Johns, requested an increased buffer zone initially, because the buffer zone created a really good gap between the schools and the residents and the actual camp.
Right.
The Office of Environment and Heritage refused that increase and said, no, we were given enough buffer zone. That was then when we had to embark on a flying fox management plan, which takes a year to 2 years to get formally done, plus approximately $300,000.
Right. Well, no doubt it's work that needs to be done. I mean, it's a very a pressing issue, particularly being a resident there. I would walk out and go for a walk at say 7 or 8 o'clock at night over the last few years, and you could not see any part of the sky that didn't have those little guys flooding it. They would fly over in their hundreds or in their thousands. And I suppose, hopefully, all things considered, they'll be doing that somewhere else this year.
Well, I can tell you and give you the assurance that our Sutherland Shire Council BAT team, as we like to be called, we are still in maintenance phase, which means we still attend the site and we still attend potential sites that we think that they might go to across the Shire. We're still watching, we're still there with our light and noise, and we will do everything that we can do according to the Office of Environment and Heritage between now and next May to make sure that the camp does not re-establish itself.
Fantastic. Look, Councillor, I really appreciate your time on the show this afternoon. Well done. You're doing a great job, and so far it's showing rewards, and I hope that the trend continues in that way. So, Councillor, I really do appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Cameron. Thank you very much.
Councillor Tracy Cook from the Sutherland Council. So progress is being made there, and it may even end up that the strategies put in place at this stage around our area may just become best practice. Maybe not just in the state, maybe not just nationally, maybe, dream big, these could become best practices in the world.
Cam Reddin, and this is your homecoming on 2SSR FM 99.7.